Welcome to Sessions with Shaw. Today we are joined by the great James Morrison. He's a world-renowned multi-instrumentalist and general jazz virtuoso. He plays almost every instrument under the sun, and he's played with the likes of Dizzy Gillespie, Wynton Marsalis, Ray Charles, Ray Brown, Gene Harris, Quincy Jones, and many, many more. He has toured around the world and continues doing so it was a pleasure to play with him and speak with him a little bit. James, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Ryan. It's great to be here.
I wanted to first start by asking you, you're from Australia. What's your upbringing like there? And then how did you end up getting connected with like so much of the jazz scene, especially with a lot of greats that came from America?
Well, growing up in Australia as a jazz musician, particularly in the time that I did, was interesting because it was very isolated. It's not like Dizzy or whoever was coming through each week on tour. So it was quite rare for really great American jazz musicians to tour Australia in those times. I was born in '62, so we're talking about through the '70s, say, and into the early '80s. Wasn't until sometime after that it became more common. So your experience of jazz, and particularly of American jazz musicians, as a young Australian, was all through records. It was listening to records. I mean, what I would have done for YouTube. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
to be able to see the players and the stuff that we can access so easily now. But you just listen to the records and your experience of them other than that was the album cover. So when I first traveled to the United States, I was 16. I was with a local like youth big band that raised a whole lot of money to go to the States on a trip. And we got invited to play at the Monterey Festival. And, they have that section of that. Like, they do a lot of festivals, where high school bands can play. And it wasn't about going and playing, of course. It was about going and hearing. And so for the first time then, Dizzy was at the festival that year. And Clark Terry played. And I heard Benny Carter. And I heard, like, all these people, like, live for the first time. And we were just, just... I don't know, I can't even find the words now. We were just amazed. It was like another planet. And that's when I said, okay, I got to come back here. This is where this music comes from. I got to get back here as soon as I can. It took a little while after that trip, but I did decide one thing. I said, I'm going to meet these people again, back here. And who knows, maybe, we didn't get to meet them that time, it was a very brief meeting where Dizzy came and spoke to the band. But I wanted to sort of like sit with them and, as you do, and find out about the history of this music. I thought, let alone perhaps get to play with them. That was kind of, maybe a bridge too far. Anyway, I got back to the States. My brother, a drummer, John Morrison, and I, had a big band together in Australia, and we did quite well there, and become quite established in our own country. And we said, right, we've got to go to New York. That's where this is all happening. And so, in a fantastic display of a jazz musician's organisational abilities, what would you do? You'd make some contacts ahead, like organise some things. No, we just bought tickets and arrived with absolutely nothing. We didn't even have a hotel booked. Like, we landed in New York with nowhere to stay. You know what I mean? Like, John had his cymbals and his sticks, and he bought a snare drum. So he did think ahead, and I had my horns, and that was it. And we arrived and moved, to New York by just arriving. We ended up, playing on the street and to get money, to just like to, busking, we call it, and to be able to eat after a while. Because, of course, we came with some money. We spent that going every night to a club to hear a band, and to hear these great players. So it didn't take long to be broke.
Yeah.
And then we lived like that, and we finally got a break. I was playing at Arturo's down on South Houston Street in Manhattan. Great food, and Jimmy, the piano player, who has long since passed away, he had the gig because he lived upstairs. And he said, "Oh, we're the worst band in New York," and I laughed. And he said, "No, I'm serious." and then proceeded to prove it. But it was a wonderful, welcoming place, and we could get fed if we played there. If we went and sat in, we got fed, so that was a big deal. But the reason that place is important is because an agent, Larry Clothier, he was an agent for Roy Hargrove and others, heard me sitting in, and said, "Hey, you should come and play somewhere with a good band." And I said, "Yeah, sure, I should." And he took me around to took me around to a place where Ron Carter and Kirk Lightsey were playing as a duo. And, I looked and went, oh, wow, Ron Carter, Kirk Lightsey. And he spoke to them and managed to get me a chance to sit in. I don't think they were very happy about it. I didn't know who Larry was. It's just this guy, but, it was New York. He said, come with me. And we did. And I sat in with Kirk Lightsey and Ron Carter. It was the first time since I'd been in New York, we'd been there nearly a year, that I got to play with anybody. Because otherwise it was snare drum, cymbal, and trumpet on the street. Just John and I. We actually hadn't played with anyone yet, other than jamming it with this, very questionable little group at Arturo's. And so after that, Larry said, "Listen, I've got Cab Calloway's big band on tour around Europe for 3 months, starting tomorrow. And our guest soloist, instrumental soloist, has fallen ill. I can't get anyone on short notice, any names, so I figure if I'm going to get, not a name, hey, surprise guest, I may as well really get someone unknown." I said, thank you. And so rather than getting one of the guys around town, that he could have got, that everyone was said, oh, yeah, we know him, I think he felt that it was, more advantageous to say, hey, here's someone you've never heard of. So suddenly, overnight, the next morning, we actually had to play on the street to get the subway fare to get to the airport. And away we went on this tour. And of course the rest then was sort of history, having toured with Cab for 3 months and met all the people that I would have during that. When I arrived back in New York, I had a record deal with Atlantic and all sorts of stuff took off. And so that's sort of, long answer, but it's it's a story that kind of puts it in perspective of how then I got connected to the American scene. Nestle Erdogan, who ran WEA Records, Warner Electric Atlantic, at the time, and had the Atlantic Jazz label. I remember meeting him in his office on Fifth Avenue, at the record company there, and he said, "Who do you want to record with?" And I was like silent, like what do you mean? Who do I? He said, "Anybody." And he said, "Look, I got an idea. There's a piano player I'd like you to play with," and it was a guy and I said, "Well, look, who are we going to get on bass and drums?" And it was Adam Makovitz on the piano. And I said, "Could we have like Buster Williams and Al Foster?" And he said, "Well, they're on tour with Herbie at the moment, but I'm sure I can pull them off for a night." And I'm going, "What?" And he
Yeah.
did. They had a night off on the tour, and he flew them over to Montreux, and we recorded an album. Swiss Encounter, it was called, with Buster Williams and Al Foster. That was my first album for them, and I just went, "What?"
Incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so you can imagine how that led to all sorts of connections, and all sorts of things happened. And a big one was when I met Ray Brown, and he invited me to tour with his trio, make it a quartet, and that at the time was with Jeff Hamilton and Gene Harris. And then later I stayed with that trio for some time, that quartet, and that became Benny Green. And we toured all over the world with that band and made a couple of albums. And it took off from there. So it was amazing, but it required definitely that step of just like jamming with the bad band at Arturo's, so that I could be heard by somebody. And and there were some great players. When I say bad band, that was just a gag on what Jimmy used to say. He used to say, "We're the worst band," and because he knew he was surrounded by these incredible musicians that would go in there and sit in, and who I got to meet and play with. But it was a long way from Australia. It was all of the. Each time I met someone, and I ended up meeting Dizzy and played with him at Montreux, and we recorded an album. Actually, Nestle Erdogan passed away, and so the album was in memoriam to him. It was just called Nestle, and that Dizzy sort of was the front guy on that album in tribute to Nestle, and I played on that, and I remember standing there, next to Dizzy Gillespie playing, and thinking back to those few years before when I'd met him briefly as a member of this high school band, and then more importantly, the years and years before that, I first heard Dizzy when I was 8 years old. Listening to records, thinking one day I might get to hear this person play live, like let alone meet them, let alone play and record an album with them. Like, it was just, it was unbelievable that would happen. And I found one thing universally, because one thing I didn't know. I mean, I figured I knew what the music would be like because I'd listened to all the records. I knew what they'd be like as players, all of these heroes of mine, and there were so many others that I've been fortunate to meet and play with. Without exception, all of these amazing individuals, these icons of the music we love so much, I didn't ever think about that. What would be like? What would they be like? Like, I knew what their music was like. I knew what their playing was like. What would they be like? What would their reaction to be to some guy from, Australia? What would these people that are like so fundamental to this music, who would meet so many great musicians from all over the world, think of some guy from Australia? Like, it would be completely appropriate to just sort of disregard such a person and go, that's just not important. This person's not important in the grand scheme of things. And that was not the case at all. Without exception, these amazing musicians were always eager to hear you play. And okay, maybe that's not true. That first time with Kirk Lightsey and Ron Carter, I remember them being like, do we have to have someone sit in? We're doing a duo gig here, and Larry pushed them.
Yeah.
But I mean, once you played, they were eager to hear you. And if they liked what they heard, they didn't care whether you were from Burrawa or whether you were from Philly or whether you were from New Orleans. You know what I mean? It was the music that mattered. And so that was just an amazing thing. And in retrospect, made perfect sense. Of course, musicians of that caliber would be mostly interested in the music, not in the background or whatever of who's playing it. Otherwise, how could they be such great musicians if they were interested in a whole lot of other things other than the music? Makes sense in retrospect. But I was just looking at the position they held rather than the musicians they were sometimes, and thinking, well, they're not going to be interested in anybody that's like, not somebody. And that just wasn't true. And it was amazing and a great lesson too.
I'm curious about your time with Ray. Was there a particular highlight from that experience or like a lesson that he taught you?
Yeah. I say it like that because was there a particular lesson? But yeah, usually one in the morning, one in the afternoon, a couple each night. Like
Mm.
you learn
Mm-hmm.
lessons from Ray Brown all the time about lots of things.
Yeah.
Wow, what a musician, what a man. I think that the one of the greatest memories I have of Ray Brown is the first time I heard him live. I mean, I'd heard so many recordings, and that sound, that groove, I knew that. I thought it can't be any better than that,
Mm-hmm.
and it was. To stand just in front of his bass, where I would stand in a quartet,
Yeah.
and he started to play like on the first sound check. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I just went, oh, oh, I see. Like
Yeah.
that's how it feels. Like there's a whole nother dimension, as we know, to live music as opposed to recorded music, and
Mm-hmm.
that extra dimension when you stand in front of Ray Brown's bass was just, yeah, it was astounding. The groove was just so deep, and every time he played, now I was used to playing with some good players by then, some great players, and not to take anything away from anyone else, but there's times when they would sound amazing a lot of the time, but there are also times when they'd sound just good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the differences with Ray was I never heard him play a single note ever where it wasn't like, oh, like
Mm.
momentous.
Mm-hmm.
There was no ordinary. There was no like, this is just a couple of choruses of good bass playing until he does something amazing again. Like you might get with other players. No, no, no. All the time, every note had this depth to it, had this thing, and you
Yeah.
just went, oh, this is like. When I met him, it was actually as part of a big band. It was the Philip Morris Super Band. So I'm sitting in the trombone section next to Irby Green, and there's Harry Sweets Edison in the trumpets and these amazing players right through the band. And the rhythm section is Jeff Hamilton, Ray Brown, Herb Ellis, and Gene Harris, and like so, yeah.
Yeah.
No one was available, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and I met Ray, and we were on tour for 3 months, and I was amazed to get invited, to be in that band.
Yeah.
And that was in '89. And we're touring around the world for 3 months. So, you get to know the people in the band. And even though Ray was like this, this star to me, he didn't behave like that. And we all got seated randomly in the plane for flights. And we did a lot of flights. We did 80 concerts.
Wow.
And so one day, inevitably, some weeks or a month into the tour, I end up sitting next to Ray on the flight. He's reading
Mm-hmm.
a magazine. So I said, hey, Ray. And he's like reading a magazine. I got to do the action. He's reading a magazine. And he doesn't even look up from the magazine. He says, yeah. And I said, that thing when the music like really swings, you know what I mean? Like the groove. Like, how do you do that? Like when my band, back home, like sometimes it just happens. It's like magic, it just happens. And we go, oh, wow. And then it just disappears. Like, how do you do it? Because every time you play, it just happens. Like you just
Mm-hmm.
do it. I can tell you're doing it. Like, how do you do that? And I'm wanting some mystical answer. I'm expecting something ethereal, something, metaphysical, something spiritual.
Yeah.
And he's looking at his mouth. He doesn't look up. He goes, practice. And I went, yeah, oh, yeah, I know, like the technique to be able to do it. Yeah, you practice that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean the thing itself, like that feeling. And he goes, practice. And I said, no, and I got to and he shuts the magazine. He goes, oh, and he puts it in the seat pocket. And he looks at me. He says, can you play high on the trumpet? And I went, oh, yeah, I guess so. He said, how'd you do that? I said, well, practice. He said, can you play fast? I went, yeah. And he said, how'd you do that? I said, well, practice. He said, so what makes you think this is any different?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, because it's the groove itself. It's what he said. Okay. He said, let me tell you how I did it. And I'm so happy to pass this on. I don't know how many people he told this to. I hope many. But if you haven't heard this is how Ray Brown learned to swing. And I literally mean how Ray Brown learned to swing. It's what he told me face to face. He said, guys, when they start learning the bass, they find out where the notes are. They start playing. And then, as soon as they've got played a medium tempo blues in F once, they go, okay, got that. And they start working on the finger position and all this other stuff. He said, that's not what I did. I started playing a medium blues here in F, and which is like a nice easy key to play the bass on. And he said, and I started playing, and I just kept playing. I didn't learn other changes. I didn't learn other songs. I didn't play other tempos. I didn't change key. I didn't go up the neck. I just kept playing until it felt right. And he said, I played thousands of choruses at the same tempo in the same key. And I just kept playing. I said, not yet, not yet. And it gradually started. It wasn't like an epiphany moment. It gradually felt better and better and stronger and stronger. He said, and until it grooved like I had in my mind, like what I wanted it to do, I didn't move on to anything else. Yeah. And I went, well, I've never heard that before. I've never heard of anyone doing that. Like that's, he said, thousands and thousands of choruses at a medium tempo until it grooved.
Yeah.
And he said, so it was practice. You got it? And I went, and I'm like astounded. I'm going, yeah. And he goes, okay. And he picks up his magazine again and goes back to it. I'm just sitting there going, I don't know if I'm elated because the answer is you just got to do it a lot, or if I'm disappointed because there isn't some magic ingredient. You know what I mean? Like something. He said, no, you just do it a lot. And I'm going, that's so ordinary. Of course, it's not. It's not, but because the magic does come. But that's the path to the magic is repetition until somehow I still feel like it's like, a divine thing that descends on you. If you do it long enough, you start to swing, if you're dedicated to it. And I think that's what he was saying. I mean, it's obviously what he was saying. You have to be dedicated to this. This has to be important to you. You can't go, yeah, and we'll swing. No. He's like, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Like he was dedicated to that groove, that feel, that ability to make the music have that energy, and he wasn't going anywhere until that was right. And that's my most enduring memory of the musical lessons from Ray. Ray was succinct musically, so I just like to tell you how that went into the rest of life. One small thing. We were checking into a hotel for a gig. I don't remember what city it was in. It doesn't matter. It was somewhere in Europe. And Ray got his key and went upstairs, and I'm still like signing in, getting mine. He comes back down the stairs into the lobby, and the guy who's dropping us off, like from the club, is still there. And Ray just goes, no, this hotel's no good. He's been up to the room for whatever reason. He never said why. He said no. And the guy went, oh, I'm so sorry. No, look, we had trouble getting hotels, and it's really busy at the time, and the soccer's on or whatever. He just started going to all these excuses. And Ray just put his hand and went, no. He said, listen. He said, you put us in a hotel, that's how you'd like us to play tonight. Like, what a beautiful, what do you say to that? Mm-hmm. You move us to the Hilton. That's what they did. They just moved us to the Hilton. What else can you say to, how would you like us to play tonight? Put us in that hotel. But that was Ray Brown to a T. That's, for me, such a great example of how he just cut through. You could have started arguing, saying, do you know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do you know who I've played with? We should be in a better hotel. All the things you could say. No, he just said, how would you like us to play? Put us in that hotel. Mm-hmm. Like, that way of thinking, that way of communicating. Yeah, that's how he played. That's how he ran a band. That's how he did, like, as far as I could see from my, friendship with him, how he did things. Yeah, it was a life lesson being with him, as well as a music lesson, and as well as just an incredible ride. Yeah.
So back to you, because I could talk about Ray for hours, but this is
me too.
This is to be featuring you, and we're so happy you were here and played with us. You played 2 instruments, trumpet and trombone, with us. I know you play even more. When you're set up with multiple horns and you're playing a standard gig, how do you decide which instrument to pick up at any given time?
Because of the fundamental question I ask whenever I go to make music. And when I say this, it applies whether I'm about to just play at a quartet, which means I can pick up any horn I like and play any notes I want, if you're improvising, or if I'm sitting in like second trumpet in a big band and I got a part in front of me and you go, well, you got to play trumpet and you got to play these notes. I believe, particularly when I'm teaching students, a lot of the time what they think when they go to play is, what would I like to play? Which sounds like a perfectly reasonable question. What would I like to play now? I think it's not only not reasonable, I think it's totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter what you'd like to play now. What would you like to hear now? Because we all know there are things that might feel good to play, or you've been working on them so you want to play them, or all sorts of reasons why you might want to play something.
Yeah.
But were you just listening to this music, is that what you'd like to hear now? Without the experience as the player, as the listener, what would you like to hear? Because that's what the music's for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just I'm just saying what my philosophy is, my opinion. Music's not for playing, it's for hearing. The playing should be subservient to the hearing. And so I asked myself, not what would I like to play now, but what would I like to hear? So instead of looking at the horns in front of me, I was on a gig last night and I had in front of me a trumpet, a trombone, a flugelhorn, a saxophone, and the piano.
Wow.
Instead of going, what do I want to play now? Irrelevant question. What would I like to hear? Because that's what's going to happen when I play it. We're all going to hear it. And so sometimes I kind of feel like it'd be nice to play the flugel now, because it has and every trumpeter listening will know what I mean. It has this feeling about it. It's kind of like a gentle trumpet. It's kind of really cool to play the flugelhorn. It feels nice. It's very relaxing and it's kind of warm and all these great feelings for playing the flugelhorn. So you get drawn sometimes, and sometimes you feel like, no, I want to slam it now, and you go pick up that trumpet, But hang on a sec, is that what you'd like to hear next? Is that what you'd like to experience? Not as the player, as the listener. So I asked that, and that makes it easy then, because I just sort of basically shut my eyes and go, what would I like to hear? And I go, it would be so nice now. It was so amazing to hear X, whatever it is, the saxophone, the piano. And so I just play that. And same with the song. What song would you like to hear next? I'd like to hear that now. That would feel great to hear that song next. And so that's what I play, rather than what would you like to play next? Oh, I really want to play Body and Soul because I've got these great new changes. I've worked out on it, No. What would you like to hear?
Yeah.
And I can't stress that enough, that it leads you... sometimes it's exactly the same position. I'd like to play the flugel. I'd like to hear the flugel. I'd like to play Body and Soul. I'd like to hear it. But many, many, many times, what I'd like to hear next, if I'm honest, is slightly or sometimes wildly different to what I'd like to play next. You could say it's semantics because you could say, well, if that's what you want to hear, then that's what you want to play. Sure. But it's the priority. It's how did you arrive at what you want to play next? By how it feels, by what you've been working on, by what you want to say, or by what you want to hear. And that's another way you could put it. What would I like to say next? Irrelevant. What would you like to hear next? What would you like to hear said?
Yeah.
It can be different. It can be different.
Yeah.
And so I just always ask that question. And that's why I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I didn't know there was such a thing as a multi-instrumentalist. I didn't know the term. I was younger. I was just playing instruments. And it was just purely, what would I like to hear now? I go, oh, it'd be so cool now. It'd be so beautiful now to hear a trombone. Well, then play the trombone.
Yeah.
I never thought, yeah, but that's being a like, it's not being something. That's just a title given to it afterwards. And so the analogy I use is not a drummer, because, a lot of horn players have a problem with that analogy, because they see it as an instrument, the drum kit, and they're so used to that. So I go, okay, here's something we're used to that works for my analogy, not against it. You see someone hammering nails into some pieces of wood on a housing construction site, and you go, oh, she's a builder, that person hammering those, and we go, I mean, who says, oh, there's a hammerer? And then they put that down, they pick up a saw to cut the next piece of wood, and you go, oh my goodness, she's a sawer as well? No, we go, no, she's a builder. Builders use hammers and saws and drills and like all sorts of stuff. They're just the tools the builder uses. What the person is doing is not hammering or sawing. Yes, in isolation, currently that person is sawing, but what they're actually doing is building.
Yeah.
Same. When people go, oh, look, he's picked up the trombone now. I go, no, I'm a musician, not a trombonist. That's like saying a sawer or a hammerer or a driller, I'm a musician. These are the tools I use. Trumpet, trombone, saxophone, whatever,
Yeah.
And some musicians just play the saxophone, and not just the saxophone, just the tenor. No problem at all. There are guys, believe it or not, on building sites that just do one thing. You get the guy in to do like the rendering, like with the concrete. That's all he does. He doesn't cut bits of wood. He's an expert just in that thing. Yeah. Cool. It's not like one is better than the other. We're all building a house. When I said, what would I like to hear next, and it was a different instrument, that didn't seem to bother me. I said, no, I'll just pick up another tool, because the tool's not that important to me. I only have one why you're playing. I don't have like different reasons for playing. There's just one. It's when you hear a piece of music and it changes you in the moment, like while you're listening. I remember for me, it was a Bach fugue. And as it's going through those changes, like the walls start receding, that the space you're in gets bigger, everything disappears,
Yeah.
and the music kind of takes you over, and you have this experience. We look for that all the time, of course, as musicians when we're playing. But when you have that experience, my initial reaction, I was 7. My initial reaction wasn't, wow, do that again, play that again, like do it to me again. I immediately went, how do you do that? I want to do that. I want to be able to walk into a space and make that happen, at least offer that to
Yeah.
everyone in the room. And if you're going to go and tell that story, it's like running into a room with the great things like, wait till you hear this, and you got some amazing news, it's going to change people's lives. You have to know the story, right? You got to be able to tell the story. So I said, I got to know how to do that so that I can walk. And that's my only reason for playing. In the light of that, how important could it be what instrument you're holding? What piece you're playing, what style of jazz it is, whether it's, early, late, modern, free, whatever, what does it matter? As long as it's serving that. And you can serve that with anything, and I do with lots of different styles, lots of different instruments, whatever. Or if you just do it with one instrument and one style, and you are a bebop player and you play the alto saxophone, fine. If your reason is because this transports me and I want you to feel it too, then as far as I'm concerned, you're doing exactly the same thing as Bach or anyone else. I think probably that could then come down to, a person who's not doing that, who's playing for some other, I believe, smaller reason, like, I've got these notes I want to play, I want to hear them in this sequence, this is really cool. Well, they're an instrumentalist as opposed to a musician, you know what I mean? I think we all can rise to be musicians. I think we can all sometimes fall a little at times from being a musician and become an instrumentalist for a song, for a chorus, for a day, hopefully not longer than that, where you go, and you can feel it. It becomes dissatisfying. You go, I'm just an instrumentalist. What's happening? This is not really, the music's not really happening. That feeling, I think that's what that is.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy. Thank you so much for being a part of this, playing with us, for talking and sharing such great stories and wisdom. Where could people follow you to make sure to catch you when you're in their city or something? And then do you have any recent projects for people to check out or things coming up?
Well, I have a website, but I think these days most of my stuff gets sort of put out through Instagram.
Okay.
That's where the main following is, and information going out. I guess one thing, I'm going to plug one thing because I'm excited about it, especially having talked about teachers and learning. I'm working on with some wonderful people on a music education app at the moment. It's called Tenacity, and I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to announce it yet. But you know what? Hey, I'm going to. When you hear about that, when it comes out, it'll be a few months away yet. But check it out. Particularly any young musicians watching this that are finding their way. As the name suggests, Tenacity. It's got a whole lot of stuff in there that I think is going to really be great for young musicians and for music teachers. It's really aimed at them too. So awesome. Check out Tenacity because I'm excited about. There's a lot of great musicians involved in it. I think it's going to make a difference.